It's Wednesday, August 19, 2020. Hello, I'm Mike Ryan, and this is BNAP Today. Today we're joined by Kirk Clyatt with the latest on the US election and by one of America's leading CPAs, Blake Christian. But first, the headlines. There are two certainties in life. One is death and the other is tax. From Utah, Blake Christian, and tax is next.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Blake Christian brings over 35 years' experience providing tax consulting and compliance services to clients. Blake joined Holthouse, Carlin and Van Trite to open the firm's Long Beach office over 25 years ago and opened the firm's Park City in Utah office in 2014. Blake, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here, Mike.
Can you give us a quick rundown on key US economic indicators at the moment and what the trends are?
Well, we're into 6 months of COVID, so it's been a little bit crazy. But the stock market, which most people view as the barometer, is back up quite a ways. Nasdaq is at record highs. The other major indexes are floating around their all-time highs. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between kind of the impact on the economy and what the stock market is telling us.
What about the medium-term outlook for the US economy? How's that looking?
It's kind of one of those things where we can only look up because we had a lot of job losses and things. So as parts of the U.S. are starting to open up, we're having employment rates drop, and but we've had some fits and starts on reopening and then having to close it up again. But I think most of the trends are good. The COVID, even though the rates of positives are up because of testing being so high, the death rates going down, and I'm getting the sense that we're getting a handle on it.
Are there many states that are pretty much back to normal at the moment, business-wise?
I would. It kind of relates to population. So the more sparsely populated states really didn't have the dramatic shutdowns like the California, New York, New Jersey, Florida. So there's definitely a correlation there. I'm speaking from Utah, and I can tell you that here, while we did have some shutdowns, commerce continued pretty well. Our business activity is pretty much still strong. Texas is still very strong. Now I'm working off of first quarter, second quarter hasn't been released, but all the numbers of a lot of the states, not the coastal, but the western states, New Mexico was strong, Idaho, and Texas were all and Arizona, those were all pretty strong.
COVID-19 or government responses sort of smashed a lot of the business community, such as tourism, retail, hospitality. Can you tell us which sectors have been least affected and which sectors are expected to make a strong recovery once the whole business community gets back to working and back to almost normal again?
Well, I can tell you, the professional service firms, those that had the good technology infrastructure, overnight we had 700 home offices. So that technology worked really well to save us. So our revenue is pretty much the same as last year, surprisingly. Law firms are busy. Obviously, our merger and acquisition group slowed down. Obviously, the hardest hit, as you mentioned, hospitality just got annihilated. That's going to take a long time to come back, especially hotels. We're getting a little bit of a bump in the travel industry, but people are still very hesitant to travel. Some surprise, as far as leisure activity, golf, is up huge in the U.S., probably around the world. There's some interesting pockets out there that have flourished.
What do you think will be the main structural changes coming out of the pandemic? Will a large proportion of small businesses never recover?
Yeah, the predictions are that 50% of restaurants probably will not reopen. I'm actually an owner of a restaurant in Southern California, and we've been closed all but a couple of weeks of this pandemic. We're 300-seat restaurant on the coast, so we'll definitely reopen. But there's just a lot of restaurants that run hand to mouth and don't have any reserves, and they're just not going to come back. Their employees have left too. That's part of the problem. A lot of employees have relocated.
How do you then? I mean, it's just interesting with the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry, and it's one thing shutting down and employment basically ceases. But how do you reconnect with your staff?
Yeah, well, there again, technology is the key. I have a daily Zoom call with my employees and different teams in LA and things during the week. But again, restaurateurs, they may not have the technology to stay as in touch with everybody, and it's part of our fundamental problem here in the U.S. right now is we paid people so much not to work that a lot of the people don't want to come back to work. Again, the lower wage employees are making more money on the unemployment lines than they are working. One other industry that really did two industries that really went well, kind of this in the sin businesses, alcohol consumption is way up, as well as the legal and medical marijuana trade is way up. So those are two other industries that are very strong.
Obviously, that's an industry that's aiming for great heights or highs.
Absolutely.
But can we get a good Pinot at a good price these days? Or are we still going to pay through the nose?
It's interesting, and I actually have an interest in a wine shop, and prices haven't really fallen. I read an article that champagne, there's just millions and millions of bottles. That's the last thing nobody's celebrating right now. There's nothing to celebrate, and so but I priced it at a wine shop, and the champagnes are still at their normal prices, but I think there's going to be some great buys during the holidays because there's a ton out there.
As long as we can get a margarita at a good price, I believe in Marina Del Rey, Baja Cantina, have them for $4.50 a margarita, which is just it's sweet music to my ears, as you would account for, Blake. Look, are we going to see a big rise in bankruptcy soon?
Well, interestingly, and it gets very little airplay, but the CARES Act, which is, it was passed as in response to COVID, the first legislative act. They actually put a lot of much more liberal rules to make it easier to file bankruptcy. And we are, I've been surprised of the resilience of the American economy and things and people's ability to hang on. But I do think that, it's just a matter of time before, we start seeing a lot of, failures in businesses. And we're seeing some of the big retailers already filing bankruptcy. Some of the large restaurant chains have filed bankruptcy. But I think we're just going to see a flood of these by year end, unfortunately.
Interesting times with the presidential elections. Can you tell us what the main tax initiatives that, say, President Trump and Joe Biden have put forward and the key differences?
Sure. So, Trump's is a little easier because he's just got minor tweaks. He just initiated an executive order in the last week and a half because of lack of Congress moving. He is imposing a tax holiday for payroll taxes. So anybody making less than $104,000 will not have taxes withheld through the end of the year. And then I thought this was pretty creative. If he gets reelected, he'll forgive those. So that's, I guess you could say, buying an election, but I thought that was an interesting play. So that's really the big one. He would like to index capital gains, so that's out there. Those are kind of the big ones. He doesn't have the 2017 Tax Act was very, very comprehensive and put a lot of good things out there for businesses and most individuals. Now switching over to the Democratic contender, Biden, he will, his is pretty widespread changes. He would go back to the pre-2017 tax rates, which would be as high as 39.6% for individuals, and that would kick in at about $400,000. And then there's also the 3.8% Obamacare tax, healthcare tax. So you're up in the 43% combined tax rates for individuals. The federal corporate rate is 21% right now. He would push that up to 28%, which is not quite as high as it was before the 2017 Tax Act. He would get rid of most of the accelerated depreciation rules. He'd get rid of the active business deduction, which can be 20%. Haircut on your taxable income for smaller businesses. He'd do away with that. And then he would, for our very wealthy clients and most disruptive for estate tax purposes, he would do away with what's called the step up in basis rule, which if I were to die with a house that I paid $500,000 for and it's worth $2 million, my heirs get a new basis of $2 million in that property, even though I didn't pay estate tax and they didn't pay estate tax on it. So he would do away with that, and also the the estate tax exemption, which is for a married couple is about 23 million right now, would fall to about less than half of that, about 10 million.
What are the analysts saying about how each side will affect the country's economic grow and the prospects under either a Trump presidency or under a Biden presidency?
Well, we're spending like drunken sailors right now, as far as, we're throwing a lot of money at the COVID recovery, trillions of dollars at a swipe. And so we're going to see inflation under, I think, either administration. I think even under a Trump administration, by the end of his 4-year term, he's going to have to increase some taxes and user fees and things like that. I mean, we've got to get more money into the government coffers. Our deficits are just, madly, just crazy high. And then, even though Biden seems to have a lot of momentum, the stock market isn't indicating that they have a massive fear of him getting in. So there's this disconnect, I think, in the stock market and what the real economy is. But I think we're going to have inflation. I think we're going to have devaluation of the dollar because we're going to have to print a lot more money. And so that's what I'm telling my wealthy clients is I'm not a stock expert, but I'm still saying, maybe decrease their exposure to the stock market, sit on some cash. Interest rates are going to come up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 6, 7, 8% interest rates in the next 4 or 5 years. There was a period in the 80s where we had most people don't remember it, but we had 18, 19% mortgage rates. Overnight funds were paying 20, 21%. It's a crazy time.
Also, some analysts are suggesting that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin might be an alternative also, especially after the Labor Day weekend.
Yep, and that's where Trump's not a real big fan of crypto. Biden has kind of been silent on it, but yeah, that's they're definitely with the worldwide chaos, a common currency definitely has some benefits, and I always say just cutting out that you're an international traveler, and just that exchange rate going into the ether every time you exchange money is frustrating for people, and using crypto, you're not going to have that.
Let's quickly talk about opportunity zones. You said it's a very powerful program. Just briefly, because we'll talk more about it next week, but why is it so powerful? Tell us about the advantages of these opportunity zones.
Right. So this is a program that was actually developed under the Obama administration, but actually passed Congress during the Trump administration. And basically, anytime somebody has a large capital gain event, whether it be short-term or long-term, can sell any asset that generates a capital gain, and they could sell their business, sell a big piece of real estate. Let's say they have $1 million gain on that. They can roll that into an opportunity zone fund, including an opportunity zone fund they can establish themselves. And the idea is that if they reinvest those funds into an economically challenged neighborhood, and there's over 8,700 census tracts that are designated as opportunity zones, they can either invest that in real estate or an operating business. And by doing that, they defer the tax until 2026. And they also get a 10% discount on the tax that they pay in 2027. And the real benefit, though, is after a 10-year hold of that investment, any appreciation, if I invested $1 million and now it's worth $3 million in 10 years, the $2 million differential goes poof. You never pay tax on it. And all but 4 states have also adopted it, so it's totally tax-free for both federal and state. So about $40 to $50 billion is the estimate right now as to what's been invested into these funds, and that money's starting to go into these neighborhoods, and will change the face of the neighborhoods and the residents as well.
Looking at Long Beach and Park City in Utah, what's the main difference at the moment with COVID and with the economy sort of struggling a bit? What's the difference between Long Beach in California and Park City in Utah?
Well, it's really it's an interesting contrast, and I'm on the phone daily with Long Beach, and then I work here primarily. But it's so we have a Utah is a red state. We have a Republican governor, and California has a Democratic governor, and so there's more of a laissez-faire. We don't want to be too restrictive. In Utah, in California, it's a lot of mandatory shutdowns and things, and definitely a lot more frustration in the business community there in California. Here, everybody's everybody's pretty content, feels like they have a lot of freedom. In the county I live in, Summit County, as well as one other county in Utah, we have mandatory masks. So when I'm not sitting by myself like now, I do wear a mask outside. Well, you only have to wear them when you're going into a building. But California, I think the whole state may have a mask mandate. I can't remember. Interesting
with the states that are, in Australia and New Zealand and other parts of the world, it's the great shutdown, but perhaps if they review the data or the data, they might come to a different conclusion. It seems to be, it's like it's running on emotion and fear more than just facts. So it's an interesting time we live in. Blake Christian from Holthouse, Cullen and Van Trite. Haven't said that for a long time. Now in Park City, and I have never said that for a long, long time. Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure, Mike. Good to see you.
The US presidential election is on Tuesday, November 3, and things are starting to really heat up. Kirk Clyatt is feeling the heat too. We'll find out why next.
Since we've seen you.
You've been stuck at home all this time.
So we reckon you deserve a holiday.
You deserve to stretch your legs.
You deserve a little sun and fun.
You deserve some chill time.
A bit of thrill time.
A bit of you time.
Australia, you deserve to play through.
You deserve a long lunch.
You deserve a sleep in.
You deserve to hang out. Woo!
You deserve a drink.
Or two.
Australia, you deserve some playtime.
Welcome back to BNAP Today, our now regular US correspondent following the elections, and he says it's really hot. Kirk Clyatt.
In more ways than one. Here I am in our OLA, outdoor living area in formerly fabulous Las Vegas. Hopefully by 2022, we hope to be fabulous once again and welcome you back to our great city. Of course, so we had lots of nonstops from China and from Korea, and hopefully soon again. It is unbelievably hot. Over the weekend, 54.4 44 degrees in Death Valley. We're about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive away from that. And here outside in the shade as I speak, it's cooled down a little. It's only about 108 Fahrenheit. That would make it all about to 44 Celsius. So 44 degrees, a little bit of a chill in the air here in Las Vegas. So after we're finished with COVID, Mike, after the United States is finished with the presidential election, the whole world can again focus on climate change, because wow, has it been an amazingly hot summer here in southern Nevada and throughout the southwest of the United States.
Yeah, I think that's just, it's leading the way for most hated subjects in my book, and that's climate change. But, you know, we have to have, it's either that or Disneyland. But anyway, moving right along, we'll leave that one alone because, you know, I have the dump button here. Looking at the elections, now, Kirk, the polls are narrowing as expected. What are the most influential polls saying at the moment? Is it Biden by 4 points, as CNN says, or is it Biden by a lot more?
Well, that is what the CNN poll did say, that it had compressed a lead from about 14 percentage points down to 4. But I think that's kind of an outlier. Most of the others are showing some narrowing of the gap, but still many show that Trump is up by about 10 points. Now, this week, poor Milwaukee. Milwaukee, kind of a downtrodden industrial American city, but it is in the key state of Wisconsin. They were excited. They were going to have the Democratic convention this year. It's still marqueed as Wisconsin, but it's really not there. No one is there. It is pretty much a virtual convention. And to counter program that, we have Donald Trump. He's making stops in key battleground states. Minnesota on Monday, going to Pennsylvania, also going to Arizona. Arizona with that huge COVID outbreak that's taking place. We have it here in southern Nevada. To give you some perspective with Australia, we have less than half the population that they do in Victoria. Victoria, of course, on that lockdown in Melbourne, they're getting maybe 400 or 500 cases a day. We are averaging close to 1,000 cases a day, and we just go about our merry way here. We, in fact, had a record for deaths in Nevada last week. I believe it was 131 deaths. So COVID, a very strange situation. You have countries like South Korea, Vietnam, Taiwan that have pretty much completely locked this down. And we here in the United States now over 170,000 deaths, and that's no real sign of it stopping. Hopefully slowing down a little bit, but stopping certainly doesn't look like it before the election.
Now, speaking of elections, Joe Biden has been sort of absent of late. Now, tell me this: being a, I would imagine that you're leaning to the Biden camp. Are there any plans for any? Are there any plans for any public debate between the opposing candidates, or will Joe need like a bit like a ventriloquist style, someone there like Kamala to help him talk?
Kamala, pretty amazing that we've got happening here. I think that was an excellent choice for her. And of course, the right goes right after her. They tried to do this birtherism thing because her parents were immigrants, but according to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, a Supreme Court ruling from over a century ago in 1898, she is completely, absolutely qualified to be both vice president and president of the United States. And then you have somebody like Rush Limbaugh, who, of course, you may remember, radio host. He's on hundreds of stations here in the United States. The original, you would say, right-wing radio host. He's dealing with stage 4 cancer, but Trump, nonetheless, gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was at the State of the Union. And what does he do? He says that Senator Harris is a mattress because apparently alleging that she had some relationship with Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco, and then the Speaker of the California Assembly, and then also calls her a hoe, H-O. So this is something that the right is doing. It's kind of unbelievable. And yes, I do want to point out that I try to bring you news, but it's also commentary too. And as for the debates you mentioned, Mike, the first one is scheduled for September the 29th in Cleveland, but there's still a lot of juxtapositioning going around. Trump saying that he wanted another one earlier because of early voting that begins, and that is a whole new story with the voting trying to be suppressed here in the United States. So I still have some doubts if there is actually going to be a debate. In October, the one vice presidential debate, which ought to be a throwdown, to say the least, between Senator Harris and Vice President Mike Pence, that's scheduled for Utah. So there's a lot of territory still to come. And I think the Biden camp, as you mentioned, kind of being quiet. They're just letting Trump basically sink himself. And if you want to look for it, there is a fascinating interview that just released here the first of the week here on the 17th of August from the chief of staff who was there, the chief of staff for 2.5 years for the Department of Homeland Security. Gives you kind of a behind the scenes glimpse of what his time there working directly with Trump in the Oval Office. And it is really enlightening how potentially scary a second Trump administration could be. It's truly remarkable.
It's amazing, though, the word ex-chief of staff. So, of course, he was happy to leave. He wasn't pushed. He just left on his own accord. He has no ill feelings towards the Trump camp.
It's hard to know, but here you've got all these books coming out from various authors, whether it's the defense secretary, whether it's Steve Bannon, all these people. Trump saying he hired the best and the brightest and all the finest people, and then all of a sudden, including his friend, his senator, Jeff Sessions from Alabama, the first real supporter he had in the Senate. And man, Donald Trump pushed that Senator Sessions right under the bus, and he lost his primary to return to the Senate in Alabama. So it's fascinating how Trump hires the best and the brightest, and then all of a sudden, they aren't.
Now, Kamala, is it Kamala or Kamala?
It's like a comma. Kamala Harris. And that's even been a controversy, too. Some of the talk show pundits accidentally mispronouncing her name. But she's an amazing person. She's South Asian with her mother from India. And then people say, oh, she's not black enough because her father from Jamaica. Well, how do you think African Jamaicans got there? They didn't just walk from Africa to Jamaica. So it's interesting, the conflicts and the controversies that are trying to be stirred up about her. And I think that's just indicative, Mike, of the fact of what a strong candidate she is, especially going against Mike Pence, who largely has been, well, can we just say Trump's yes man?
Now, what are the main election issues for voters at this time, Kirk?
Well, first of all, we have to deal with COVID because COVID is shutting everything down. As much as Trump wants to ignore it, it is key. And what is just crazy is right now we have neither the House or the Senate in session. It looks like the House is coming back to vote on legislation for the Postal Service, which is just crazy. And it is impacting the mail delivery without a doubt. I can give you just my own anecdotal experience. Back on the 7th, I ordered some computer memory from a company outside of Chicago. We're recording this on the 17th, 10 days later, to get from Chicago to Las Vegas, and it's a no-show. And there are many, many other incidents of this, people that live in rural areas that need to get their prescriptions filled. So clearly, Trump is trying to slow down the mail, feeling that he has a better chance if he makes it harder for people to vote. So COVID, voting, and voting rights across America is really an amazing situation that here on the century of women's suffrage, 100 years ago, I think actually this week, we had the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Here, a century later, there's still so much fighting over voting and voting rights here in the United States. I know for sure I'm not going to mail in my ballot. I'm actually going to take it to a ballot drop-off box or vote in person when the time comes. And of course, the economy, official numbers has under 11% unemployed, which is still higher than at any point during the Great Recession. But the reality is it is a lot higher than that. At the end of July, the special assistance were folks who are on unemployment. They're basically having income replacement of up to $600 a week. That has been cut off. This is the third week that has been cut off. So while the stock market is doing exceedingly well, there are many, many people, especially when you look at a service sector economy like we have here in Las Vegas, where conventions are gone, the great international travelers that we welcome so many of gone. Give you an example. In June, the casinos reopened on June the 4th. Many of them have not. We still have 11 major casinos closed down with no real sign of when or if they're going to open again, including a big one that just did millions and millions of dollars of renovations called the Palms just off the Strip, and a host of others too. So we had 1 million visitors during June in Las Vegas. Sounds like a lot, but we need 1 million a week to sustain our economy. So many, many people are suffering, while the rich with the stock market, you look at something like the Tesla stock, or you look at certainly something like the Amazon stock, with this pandemic, it has just popped tremendously, going from under $2,000 a share to now over $3,100 a share. It's truly amazing.
You mentioned the US Postal Service. Actually, I think around the world, postal services are quite deplorable at this moment, mainly because of COVID too, and the increase in demand. But you mentioned that you were waiting on memory to arrive, and Joe's been waiting on that for a long time. And unfortunately, he won't get it in time. And that's probably why, though, they don't want Joe Biden to actually to debate with Donald Trump. And Trump, whether you like him or not, Trump's very sharp. And at the moment, Biden is not so sharp. And
Trump is as sharp as a butter knife, Mike. I mean, he is.
Yeah, but you can't say that about Biden. Biden's terrible. I mean, he's just.
What is?
I mean,
wait.
Everybody can see Kamala Harris is going to be the president.
I don't know if that is true, certainly, or not. But, you got to look at Donald Trump. What's that country that makes all those computer hard drives? According to Donald Trump, that's Thailand.
So what are the main issues that Joe Biden is running on?
Well, I think he's running on the fact that he's not Donald Trump. You have a lot of people, Trump's base, they vote for him. It's Joe Biden. I mean, we've got my dog Ted here, who's out hanging out with me. They would vote for, he's a sexy senior canine, they would vote for Ted over Donald Trump. I mean, I think people would vote for virtually anybody. So the fact that Joe Biden is a longtime politician, that he knows the ins and outs of Washington, all important. He's gone through incredible personal tragedy. Before he was sworn in, when he was a young man, not even 30 years old, his wife and his daughter killed in a traffic accident. He was a single dad to his sons, one who became the Attorney General of Delaware, Beau Biden. And I really believe that if Beau hadn't died, he got the same type of brain cancer that John McCain did, that if Beau hadn't died, it would be a totally different world right now, because Joe would have run for president as Barack Obama's vice president in 2016, and he would have won. He would have been the president today. So it's just that butterfly effect taking place. The death of one person, Joe Biden's son, really, in my view, changed the direction of the entire world.
What about the main issues that Donald Trump is running on?
Well, here again, I think it's the fact that he is Donald Trump. His base adores him. It's something that's almost hard to understand, because now much of his base is getting hit hard by coronavirus. University of North Carolina, their flagship campus, they tried to bring the students back. Didn't work. They had so many COVID outbreaks, they've had to shut that down. In Georgia, you hear Trump say, open the schools, open the schools. Near Atlanta, school opened for 1 week. 35 cases of COVID among the students and teachers. Shut that down. They're trying some other part-time learning thing. But his base adores him with the fanaticism that you could almost call a cult.
I'm almost one of those, but I shall resist at the moment. I am looking for my mask, my Donald Trump mask, that will keep away every evil thing. Now, some expect a record turnout this election. Why is that?
Well, if people can get to the polls, we've seen that already in the primary, because people are motivated. To his credit, Donald Trump has his cult members, his voters energized, but the vast majority of people are, I believe, not his supporters. What you have to see this time, you say, oh, the polls were all wrong in 2016. What we have now is that Donald Trump's highest point in the polls has not equaled Joe Biden's lowest point. Now, you did have that at 2016, where at times Donald Trump's highest point in the polls was above Hillary Clinton's lowest point. So now you have Donald Trump, his highest point is still below the lowest point in the polls for Joe Biden. So it's a different complexion than we had in 2016. It's hard to run against the establishment when you have been the establishment for the past 3.5 years. And right now, people are saying we have a national emergency here. We have got to get a grip on what is going on. But the Senate, Mitch McConnell, they're all at home. They're campaigning. The House looks like under Nancy Pelosi's leadership will come back in session this week to vote on the Postal Service situation and try to protect an institution that, well, Benjamin Franklin, he started. He was the nation's first postmaster general. He'd be rolling over in his grave right now. You can see that move in Philadelphia because Ben's rolling over. He was the nation's first postmaster general before there was a nation in 1775.
What can change or turn the election?
Well, I think one thing that, of course, Trump has been focusing on, he's looking for a message to resonate with the voters that got him over the top. Right now, he's been saying things like, I'll protect the suburbs and not let more multi-unit housing in the suburbs. But one thing he was starting to get some traction on, and it was one of the things that he in part kind of manipulated, was the violence taking place in the streets. That's very scary to a lot of people. So if we did see extreme civil unrest, that could actually be a real positive for Donald Trump, and especially if they bring out more troops into the streets. And then while it looks highly unlikely in the next 10, 11 weeks, we're going to see a vaccine for COVID, there could be some breakthrough therapeutic, and that could be a huge help. It's never over till it's over in politics, especially with the crazy events of this year. But the 538 website, because that's how many electoral votes they are, 538, said right now we're looking at a 71% chance of Joe Biden becoming the 46th president of the United States.
Well, the heat is really on Donald Trump. How would you handle, if you were Donald Trump, how would you handle the heat?
Well, what I would do, first of all, is listen more to my advisors that have had experience, but he's shown us that he hasn't done that, from the Secretary of Defense to Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, even people like Steve Bannon. So I don't know how much advice I could give to the President of the United States. But as for me, Mike, are you ready? Are you ready for what we enjoy here? We have a little, we live kind of in a lower socioeconomic area here in Las Vegas.
I'm getting scared, Kirk. I'm getting nervous.
Since I don't fluently speak Spanish, I'm actually one of the minorities here, but it's good to learn. Poco español, a few words in Spanish. I speak a couple little words in Spanish. But what we do have is we have a pool on the driveway. Yes, in fact, let me just go ahead and I won't be able to hear you anymore, Mike. It's been a real pleasure. So I'm going to disconnect the Apple Pods.
But should I warn children?
Take off the shirt and we'll just go ahead and we'll just go with me, come with me, and you'll see what we've got going on here. One of our lights are going down, but here we go.
Well, it all happens in Vegas. It's a body to die for. Well, just maybe to die. Well, that's Kirk Clyatt from Las Vegas. Obviously in over his head at the moment, but swimming well, as all politicians would do this time of the year, heading towards the presidential elections. Well, that's it for BNAP today, August 19, 2020. I'm Mike Ryan.